Hello, folks, and welcome to the Richest Men in Town podcast. I'm Mike Freeman, and together with my good friend Tyler Gould, we invite you along on our quest to learn how to be the richest men in town. The show title comes from the line at the end of the classic Christmas movie, It's a Wonderful Life. You've probably seen the movie a million times. It's the scene where little brother Harry Bailey toasts his big brother George, who's dealing with a monumental crisis of finances, of family, and of faith. In that moment, all the problems melt away as Harry gives George the title, the richest man in town. We love that moment and the lessons it teaches, and we're committed to try to live that kind of rich life. This little podcast project is all about learning more about what exactly the rich life looks like as men, as husbands, as fathers, and as friends. Here we will sit down with people that we think have something to teach us about living a rich life, even if they don't think so. So we raise a glass to our guests and to you. We hope you get something out of it, because we know we will. I think about that amateurs compete and professionals create.
Yeah.
You know, and you start thinking about your patriarchal blessing. And you start thinking about the gifts and the blessings that you have and the strengths. And it's like, man, why don't we just develop the heck out of those?
Yeah, and it goes back to that idea too. It's like professionals create. You know, I was telling you about that talk the patriarch gave, right? Where these are promises that you can realize if you seek after these things. And so it's that idea of like focusing on what we should be focused on, right? That are going to get us to the place where we really need to be. It goes back to that thing you were just talking about. It's like the things I do well, I'm going to do.
Yeah.
The things I don't do well, I'm not even going to worry about, right? Yeah. And if we were just totally, and think about that. You get your patriarchal blessing that sits in front of you, and these are the things you do well, right? It's like on paper format for you. So if we just looked at that and said, okay, these are the things I'm going to do. Everything else.
Well, good is the enemy of great.
Yeah, it is.
Right? And if you're sitting there and you have a roadmap for what you're really great at, why are you going to try to be good at some other things?
It's so ridiculous. As you're saying this, and I just am mad at myself.
But I mean, I think we live in that, especially as men, we live in this myth of like the Renaissance man.
Yeah.
I don't want to be this. I want to dabble in some painting and give me a guitar and give me. Yeah. It's like, you know what? You have something that you were born to do, and it comes easier to you than to others. And I don't know if you've done inventory on that, right? I don't know if you've actually sat down and said, "Hey," right? I was listening to a great podcast episode on All In. And the guest basically gave you instructions on how to do that. Yeah. Like, think about the things that people compliment you on.
Yeah.
Right? Think about those things that come up from time to time where it's like everyone else is stressing and you're like, man, I love this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's actually you get angry that other people aren't at your level.
Oh, totally.
You know, we watched that Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and it's like he was just like, you know.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely. I mean, I can relate to that feeling. Here's the work that needs to be done. Okay. And we talked a little bit about this with Dennis. You know, I believe that everyone has a really large capacity to do things, right? Your capacity with what you can handle is far greater than what you think it is.
But again, I think this is where you're going. If it's in my strength,
right? See, there's
some places where I'm naturally hamstrung.
For sure.
Now I know that there's no. I don't want to limit God.
Right.
And there are some things that if I went after and sought after, I could probably receive some gifts, and do some things. But like, I'm not gonna dunk a basketball.
Right. But that my point is though that I get angry when people can't recognize they have this greater capacity, right? And I've told many people many times, it's not a capacity issue, it's a vision issue, right? If you could see what I feel like I see, we would just be fired up that we have so much junk on our plate that we have to do. And we would just be chomping at the bit to get it all done, right? So that's one of the things I get angry about, right? Like, to a certain degree, I look at it and go, we could do so much. Like we could push this work so far forward if we would all just sit here and look at what the vision is and catch that vision. Whew, it's exciting, you know, but then you talk to people that are like, I don't see it. I'm really busy. I got a lot going on in life. That's a whole nother thing I got to do. And I'm just thinking like, you are missing it, man, you know? So I totally get that idea of like getting upset about, you know, what you feel like other people should be grasping that you're getting, you know?
Yeah. So usually we ramble a little bit and then
Right.
somebody joins us. Tonight, this format for the show changes a little bit, and it can because it's our show.
Right? That's right. Right. We can do whatever we want.
So sometimes we bring in a guest. Sometimes we're going to hang out together, and sometimes we might bring in 3 guests. It's just whatever we feel we need to do. And the reason why we're going with this format tonight is, there are so many things happening in our world, right? In not just like in the United States or in the world, but
Right.
like
In our
your
individual
world,
worlds. Yeah.
in my world.
Absolutely.
Looking at the things our kids are going through, and we just thought it'd be great to kind of tap the brakes, right? And you know, dig in and say, hey, Tyler, what's cooking in your thinking as you know, look at both of us graduated kids this week, right?
Yeah, it's a cool thing because typically we spend so much time just thinking about ourselves and where we are and what we have to accomplish. And we have this list that we're always working off of. And so this week in particular kind of gives a different spin on things, right? Because I'm not so much worried about what I got going on. I'm pretty concerned about what my son's got going on, you know, as a recent high school graduate and some other big changes and decisions he's made that are coming up. So yeah, I mean, it's a fun time to, you know, I think anytime we can take a step outside of ourselves and look at other people, it gives us a lot of joy. And so this is even closer to home with our own kids, your daughter graduating and got some big changes coming up. So yeah, it's exciting, man.
Well, and excitement is one word for it. You know, I think that there's some anxiety that we feel too.
For sure.
But I think that I believe this, and this show's actually solidified my belief in this. I believe that when I have eyes to see, truth gets dropped along the path.
Yeah.
Right. And little elements of things. Maybe it's something that you read and you share with me. Maybe I pick up something. And literally, I believe that. I believe if I say a prayer, I walk around and I have eyes to see, someone's going to come up to me and share something. I'm going to see something on the news, right? And it's just like, grab it, record it, share it.
Yeah.
And a while back, Tyler, we were talking to Toby Crawford on this show. And that guy was great. That conversation was great. We talked a little bit about chains. We talked a little bit about chains that bind,
Right.
chains that weigh us down. If you remember, we got into some Marley,
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
Scrooge and all of that. But I came across something, and I gotta share it with this group because it has me rethinking that idea, right? That idea of chains. It's coming from David Brooks. Okay. David Brooks, the author. He says this: in reality, the people who live best tie themselves down. Right? I'm going to say that again. In reality, the people that live best tie themselves down. They don't ask, what cool thing can I do next? They ask, what is my responsibility here? Remember the show, right? The purpose of the show and what we're trying to do. What is my responsibility here? They respond to some problem or get called out of themselves by a deep love. By planting themselves in one neighborhood, one organization, or one mission, they earn trust. They have the freedom to make a lasting difference. It's the chains we choose that set us free.
I mean, the whole quote is sort of mind-blowing, to be honest with you. It's like, it's so counterintuitive You know, I mean, when you read it, it's crazy, because I think early on, you and I've had this discussion before about how when we talked about comparison, right? And we said comparison is the thief of joy. That was a quote that we kept throwing around in one of our episodes. But then you brought up the point that, hey, some comparison is good, right? We compare ourselves to other people. Maybe that motivates us. It gives us an example of someone that we can try to attain that is good. And now we have this idea of chains, right? And you mentioned Scrooge and Marley and the chains that sort of held them in this dark place. And here the author David Brooks is saying, hey, it's the chains that free us, right? And I mean, I'm
those that live great,
right? I'm a little blown away by the quote. It's pretty phenomenal.
Those that live best actually tie themselves down. They commit themselves. Think about George Bailey.
Right.
You know, I've often looked at George Bailey as trapped.
Right. Yeah.
Circumstances outside of his control.
Totally.
Tied himself.
Yeah.
Trapped himself. Chained himself to things that he may have even had animosity towards.
Right.
But the things that lead to that great life are those things that we tie ourselves, right? When we tie ourselves to a cause, when we tie ourselves to a community, when we tie ourselves to a mission, that's actually giving us an ingredient to that rich man life.
Yeah. And when you read this to me for the first time, one of the first thoughts I had was this idea of roots, you know, and you could look at roots in that same context of chains, right? Because if you allow yourself to be committed to a cause or a purpose or a community or a faith or an organization, and you stick with that, you begin to have deep roots. And when you have deep roots, you can impact change in any one of those aforementioned areas, right?
Well, that's why it says they earn trust.
Absolutely, right?
Right? Like, think of a community issue and a guy comes in from out of town.
Yeah.
Hey, the town I was just in, we did this.
He's the outsider.
He's got no trust.
Right.
The community's like, look, man, you don't know our issues.
Yeah.
On a personal level, I don't even know if I've shared this story with you. I mean, most likely I have, but a couple of years ago, so I live up in Northern California. A couple of years ago, I took the wife and family, and we went out and visited some family out in Utah. Caught up with a good friend, John Brandenburg. John Brandenburg has since passed away, and I think about John a lot. But in that visit, John had recently left Northern California, the town where we lived, and had moved out there with his family. And we were talking, and he was selling it. He was selling Utah to a Redding guy.
Yeah.
And he was hitting all the right buttons, right? Because Redding has some issues. All communities have issues.
For sure.
Redding has some issues, and those issues were pretty heavy on my heart at the time. And I was buying what he was selling.
Yeah.
He was talking new construction, low unemployment, low homeless.
Yeah.
Right. And kind of painting a little Shangri-La. Right?
Sure.
A little utopia. But I looked at my wife when we got in the car, and I just said, we're crazy. Why are we going home? You know the town we're going home to. Why are we going home with the problems that we have? So the next morning I took it to the temple, took that thought to the temple. That also helped with the sales pitch, right? Wake up and there's 4 temples 10 minutes from me.
Yeah.
So I took it to the temple, and I'm sitting there in the celestial room, and I'm seriously considering a move.
Yeah.
And Utah's never really called me like that.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I dig Cafe Rio, dig the family, like taking kids through Provo and going on campus, but then it's like, get me home. The message was loud and clear, man. Go home.
Yeah.
You have roots.
Yeah.
You've been there 15, 16, 17 years. You have relationships in the community.
Right.
You have a position in the community where you might be able to make a difference.
Yeah.
Go home.
Yeah.
And so when I heard that was the first thought
that
I had, right?
Yeah.
It is crazy counterintuitive.
It's wild, man. I mean, I think it's worth exploring, because I think the word responsibility stands out to me, and immediately when you first shared that quote with me, I penciled down the word responsibility, and I wrote underneath it, God, family, spouse, community, country, right? What are our responsibilities to those things? And I think that it's important for us to feel a sense of responsibility, right? There's this idea, I think, in popular culture that we need to be unburdened and unchained and have this idea of complete freedom. And, and we could look at that and maybe we could even make an argument that, our society puts so much value in that we start to not value certain things as much as we should. Look at that list. God,
when you think about that really quick in the context of COVID.
Yeah.
Because so many people have stormed state capitals demanding freedom.
Yeah, right.
Demanding freedom, saying, give me my life back.
Yeah.
And the government, public health experts have come in and said, do this for others.
Right, yeah.
That responsibility. I remember a couple of episodes ago, you said, sometimes what I want to do and the adult responsible thing to do don't necessarily show up on the same page.
Right.
But that richest man in town, that life goes after the responsibility.
Right. Because I think if we dive into the responsibility and we accept that we need to have a level of grit, right? And that we're going to have to grind some of these responsibilities out, and they're not going to be fun and exciting. But at the end of that road comes high school graduation, right? So you've spent 18 years with your daughter grinding things out, blood, sweat, tears, right? Missing things that you would probably love to have done on your own free time, prioritizing her above those things. And now 18 years has passed, and you can look back, instead of saying, dang, I missed that last Beastie Boys concert that I could have gone to, but I went to this event with Grace. I mean, now 18 years in the rearview mirror, it's like, yeah, that was a no-brainer, man.
Yeah, I feel like I'm receiving dividends.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you've invested.
Yeah, right.
And you've invested into these young people.
Right.
And now you're starting to see, oh, wait, maybe that time, maybe those sacrifices, maybe those lessons, maybe it found a place in that head.
Yeah.
Right, in that brain.
And it's fun to see, your daughter and my son, and they because I think your household is similar to mine in that there's not a command to do all things that I tell you to do, right? In my household, we operate with, this is what we do, this is why we do it, and I sure would like you to figure out and find the benefit of what we're doing on your own, right? And when they put those things to the test, whether it's helping other people, whether it's going to church and developing their own faith, whatever it may be, and they come back and say, hey, Dad, guess what? Here's some value I found in some things that you've shown me. It's like, yeah, this is right. This is what it's all about. And so when you talk about chains, talk about responsibility in that quote, it makes me think about our kids, right?
Well, and how many times have we used that analogy of like the kite and the kite string?
Right. Yeah.
These kids want to fly. These kids want to get the heck out of here. And we totally get that because we were kids once.
For sure.
But when you take the kite and you put it up in the sky and you cut the kite strings, common sense would be that kite's going to take off.
Yeah.
And what happens?
Yeah.
That kite comes plummeting down.
Right.
Right. And I think that I think that this conversation of chains in the context of graduation is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Because I kind of want that chain, right? I want to give,
Right.
And I want to let her go out, and I want her to explore, but I want her to feel like she's got ties to home.
Yeah.
Right? Ties to our family, ties to the name almost.
Right.
Right? Like, hey, you're Freeman, and this is how we'd like to impact the world.
I like that thought. And but I mean, that's that whole idea of roots, right? You're developing roots, and you're developing these deep, expansive, far-reaching roots in the hopes that your daughter, your son are going to see that and want to develop their own roots as well.
Yeah, and I you mentioned roots. I think it's interesting because I'm looking at a transplant, right? You had roots. You had roots in a place.
Yeah.
And you had the faith to make a move, right? And to actually put down roots where you're at.
Yeah, and I think what makes that easier, because, right, we're going to see our own kids do this. Unfortunately or fortunately, and that changes every day for me. They're leaving the house, right? So it's either a good thing or it's a bad thing, depending on when you ask me. But what's great is I left the town of Redding, came down here to San Diego, and started to put down new roots. But here's the thing, right? I already had chains, if you will, or roots, if you will, in an organization and a faith that allowed me to almost have instant depth in my roots here in a new area. So I think that there's obviously a lot of benefits of religion in our lives and faith in our lives, and I think that community and the ability to establish roots quickly is definitely one of those.
Well, and helps with the transplant.
Right. And I think of our own kids, right? Transplanting, Grace is going to go off to college. My son's getting ready to go to Brazil on a mission, right? There's roots, and they're going into an established community that they can, it's fertile ground that's going to help them put roots down quickly. Hey,
I don't want to leave the script, but do you remember the story? And I don't want to put you on the spot either, but shortly after you moved,
yeah,
I think your oldest came to you with a conference talk because of your faith.
Oh gosh,
do you remember that?
Yeah, keep talking. I do.
I remember you sharing that as a pretty powerful moment.
Yeah.
That really validates.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for, right? I mean, I think at the end of it, I'm a little emotional remembering that, but that's what we want, right? And again, I don't want my daughter to recognize that talk as something important because she thinks I will be impressed by that, right? I want her to find that talk and identify with that talk because, one, those are principles that she's been taught since day one, right? Two, that message and those principles speak to her soul, right? And so there was common ground, I think, when she found that talk and came to me and said, "Hey, Dad, this is this talk," and it made me think of you and what we've decided to do. And I was proud more than anything that she had the ability and the capacity to recognize that feeling of truth, right? And so that's a powerful moment for me. Dude.
Well, and not only to recognize that, but to see that that's your why for doing what you did.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That's a big deal. Your faith was all over that move.
Right.
And that it was evidence.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that we can talk about faith all we want.
Yeah.
But showing.
Right.
And doing hard things.
Yeah.
But doing hard things with faith that they'll work out.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think too, we've talked about this a lot too, this idea of modeling, right? And so we do the hard thing. And I think equally as important as doing the hard thing is sitting down and explaining to someone who's at your side why we're doing the hard thing. You know, I mean, I remember as a kid, you know, my parents would tell me to do something and I'd say, well, why? And they'd say, because I said so. And then I'm like, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, right? Like, I don't want to do it just because you said so. But in those moments when I'm in the middle of a hard thing, to be able to step back for a second, sit down with the people that are attached to my train in the middle of the hard thing and say, hey, listen, here's why we're doing this hard thing. And I believe some good's going to come of this hard thing. And let's all be on the lookout for that good that comes from it, right? So when that moment comes and my daughter comes to me and says, hey, here's some of the good that came from that hard thing. I mean, that's like you mentioned dividends. That's what it's all about, right? That's it.
And you know, that I don't want to say this and appear to be insensitive. I love my daughter.
Right.
I wish her hard things.
For sure.
You know, like as a graduate going out into the world, and she's an ambitious girl, and I believe these kids are going to change our world. I think our world could use some of the things that they're going to be offering. But I hope for some mistakes, right? I hope for some. I don't want crash and burn, right? I don't want carnage. I don't want train wrecks, because those sound expensive.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do. I mean, I want those broken roads.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
And you mentioned principles, and I don't know what. You know, I don't know what your hopes are. I think that as you said, you know, our families are similar. Our kids are close in age, and they're good friends.
Yeah.
And, I would assume that the hopes that you and Ricky have for your kids are the same that Kelly and I have for ours. But I want to share with you a couple of thoughts that I put out to my daughter and to the social media world with her graduation.
Yeah.
Get your thoughts.
Great.
Okay? So 3 thoughts. The first one is that I really need my daughter to understand that concept that you get one of these things called life, right? You get one shot. Now, you get lots of chances.
Yeah.
Right? You get lots of chances, but you and I think we've got a faith that there's a date on a calendar with a red circle around it saying, Mike's coming home.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I just would really hate for my daughter to collect regrets.
Yeah.
I'm touched by the life of Gordon B. Hinckley, and Gordon B. Hinckley in his biography, crazy thick read, but at the end, his children talk a little bit about growing up with dad, and his children share that he regularly prayed in family prayers to live lives without regret.
That's awesome.
I love that.
I love that too.
I think about what a powerful thing to be taught.
Yeah.
Right, through prayer.
Yeah.
What a powerful thing to be asking for. I want my daughter, on that same note, on that one life, I really want my daughter to grow up living her life.
Yeah.
Not someone else's. And I told her, shed anyone that tries to make you do something you don't want to do.
Yeah.
Including me.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's going to be moments where she's going to come and she's going to have this major or this idea or this, that. And I don't want to mold her. I want to help her unfold and help her see the path that's out there. But, so that was one.
Can I comment on that for a second before you jump to the second one? I think I love the idea of no regrets as well, like living life with no regrets. And I think that there's a thought process that if I make mistakes, I have regrets, right? I think it takes discipline and a disciplined person to be able to make mistakes, to crash and burn a little bit, to scar up your knees and to be able to stand up, learn from that experience, and not make that a regret, but make that a launching pad to the next step, you know? And I think that that's important. I mean, when Gordon B. Hinckley's praying that we live life with no regrets, I don't think he was praying that his children would make no errors in life, right? It's that they would accept the errors and the trials for what they were meant to be, which is a learning opportunity, and to move forward from those. And I think that's a powerful thing. I know people close to me that I'll have conversations with them, and they'll say, I have so many regrets, and I just think, man, what a burden to wander through life just regretting, keeping a journal of all the things that you regret. I mean, I think that journal really, if read properly, is a ledger of learning opportunities that you were able to spring back from. So I love that thought. So anyway, those are my thoughts on regrets.
Well, when you talk about going through those failures or those mistakes, I think of the quote from Churchill. I think Churchill said it. Success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. Yeah. And it would be great to raise kids that can just pick themselves up.
Yeah.
Say, got it, learned it, on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
Right. On to the next thing. Yeah. I think of I think of that ride the other day with Dennis, and one of the conversations that came out of that was that movie With Honors.
Yeah.
And the premise of that movie is Joe Pesci is a Harvard bum who uses some means to kind of extort a little privilege from some of the Harvard students, and befriends them, and he's dying. And he wants to die alone, but with his newfound friends won't let him. And as the friendship develops, Joe Pesci's character shares some regrets. And his friends take him on a road trip to try to fix some of those regrets. And one of the powerful scenes, Joe Pesci carries around a little velvet bag in his pocket of rocks. And each rock has a meaning. Each rock takes him in his mind to a life experience. And I'm not gonna spoil the end of the movie, but what a powerful image, right, of carrying around these mementos or souvenirs of moments, and they hurt.
Yeah,
I think every one of them hurt.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, we're those moments are unavoidable, but it's what we do with the moments. And I loved that conversation with Dennis, and I loved you when you brought that up in our conversation with Dennis. It made me think of people that have been influential, in my life, and that have helped steer me in the right direction. And sometimes that's completely by happenstance. It's not like I've sought out this person to be a mentor. But yeah, I think that we have to carry those things around. I think I mentioned before my Rolodex that's old school, right? But we have to have that going on, right?
Yeah.
Where we can reference those things, and when we're in that moment where we're sort of bogged in the mire, we can reference that point and use that as a foothold to move forward.
Yeah. Let me read this from my thoughts that I shared with Grace upon her graduating. Hopefully you will make mistakes, lots of them. But don't ever fool yourself into thinking that uncorrected mistakes are okay. They are not okay. Go back, learn from them, and fix them to the best of your limited abilities, and that will keep the path clear for you to be the best you that you can be. Man, I think to myself of this myth that I sometimes get caught up in, that mistakes can be covered up with effort. I messed that up. I'm just going to work harder. Right. And a lot of times that mess up is a relationship. I'm just going to grind.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And I'm not going to go back, and I'm not going to apologize, or I'm not going to fix that thing. I'm just going to work really hard, and it'll go away.
Yeah.
And I think, man, that's just not accurate.
Yeah.
It's not even close to accurate. Number one, that's a wedge.
Right.
The second that you have that break in that relationship and you don't address it, that's a hidden wedge. It will divide.
Yeah.
It will limit growth between you and that person, and there will be a wedge. And 20 years from now, it'll be completely severed if you don't go back and you don't fix it. Number two thought on that is, if you didn't learn it, if you didn't go back, you're more than likely doomed to repeat it in another relationship down the road.
It's funny because that makes me think of our conversation with John Crosby that we had, and he was telling the story about talking to his wife about something, and he made some kind of snide remark, right? And she said, that hurt my feelings. And he said, oh, I know I meant it to hurt your feelings, and I feel bad that I did that, and I'm sorry. But I loved that whole exchange, like his admitting that was intentional, and then his immediate apology and the desire to change that, right? I think that's.
But if he doesn't, right?
But if he doesn't, that becomes something that will continue to happen throughout the relationship, and then you're creating space between you and.
Yeah, and the wife keeps score.
Right.
A long history of grievances and abuses, and before long, a whole bunch of little things add up to this unsurmountable thing, when you could have just taken the time and gone back and said, hey, that's a mistake on my part.
Yeah. I love, that's great. Sage advice.
Yeah. So the first one, you get one life. Second is, I want my daughter to seek truth. I do need to clarify here. I am not telling my 18-year-old daughter to go find her truth. Right.
Which is the buzzword of the day, right?
Yeah. The truth is relative.
Right.
But I think that there's that hymn, oh, say what is truth.
Yeah.
Right? I love that. Like, it is worthy of the quest, right? And you'll dedicate your whole life to it. But once you've discovered it, build that as the foundation, and it won't fail you.
Yeah.
It's bottomless.
Yeah. Which I think is sort of the reason for this podcast, right? We talk about being selfish and wanting to grow and progress and become better. Well, the reality is, I feel that we have some truth. And we're trying to build on that with bringing other people in here that'll say, hey, here's where I'm at. And if we're not willing to adjust ourselves and make those changes and continually seek, then we eventually become stagnant and there's no growth. And eventually there's death, right? In our own testimonies, our own ability to move forward.
Yeah, you talked about that capacity, and living should be growth.
Yeah.
If truth is alive in us, it should be a bountiful life.
Yeah.
And that capacity should be ever increasing.
Yes.
Right? Now, I know that circumstances and context matter.
Sure.
Right? So we're not going to be, there's going to be uphill and downhill. We pedal downhill.
Right.
We take advantage when life is easier. But, that capacity should be ever increasing, because this thing is not dead.
Right.
Right. And so, in sharing that concept and that idea of truth, I don't have a tattoo, right. But if I did, I would have 2 + 2 is 4.
Yeah.
Right. I love that because it reminds me that there is truth out there, and there's truth out there to discover. You and I both know that in the world, there's people yelling, no, it's 7.
Yeah.
No, it's 72. No, it's 4,321. Whatever. Yeah. But it isn't.
Right.
2 + 2 is 4 in San Diego. 2 + 2 is 4 in Redding.
Yeah.
I can travel across the world, and truth is truth is truth.
Yeah.
Truth is universal.
Yeah.
Right. It's simple, not easy. It's eternal. Right. And I think the things that it is not, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
There's times when the true thing, and it is not convenient for you in that moment.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think what's great about that, Mike, is that you've spent 18 years teaching your daughter how to recognize truth. that is a lost art, right? I don't think that we spend enough time learning how to recognize truth, and being excited about receiving truth. I remember talking to someone one time, and I told him, I said, I feel this urge deep down in the depths of my soul to continually try to improve myself and be better. And they said, oh, I don't like that. It sounds overwhelming. Like, it sounds like you're saying you're not good enough. And I said, no, but what it is that there's something gnawing at me that tells me I can do more, and there's more capacity. There's more opportunity to perfect myself and try to become a better person, right, all around. And I think that when you're young and you're taught that principle that, hey, truth is important, and if we seek truth, here's how we can recognize truth. I think it makes it a lot easier on that path.
I agree. I don't think any of us are very good at being intentional about that. You know how it feels. Mm-hmm. I know how it feels.
For sure.
We are guaranteeing that everybody in the room is feeling it. Why don't we turn to one another and say, you all feel that?
I tell you what, Mike, one of the things that I love to do in a church setting, especially when I'm with youth, right, and we're talking about truths, is just that. Like, stop for a second. All right, let's take inventory of the feelings we have right now. Let's take inventory of those things that are putting thoughts into our heads that say, hey, Mike, you can do a little bit more. You can change a little bit, right? Because those are the things that are gonna be impactful 25 years down the road, 30 years down the road, right? If we can be so tuned in that is just a natural recognition.
And when you have it, right, only you can give it up.
Right. Yeah.
Truth is not secret.
Mm-hmm.
Truth is sacred, but it is not secret. Right. It's not a VIP club behind the beads, right, or behind the velvet rope. It is about doing the work, discovering it, and nourishing it when you get it.
And here's the interesting flip side of that, right? You said earlier, I want my daughter to experience hard things. You know what's hard? Finding truth, holding on to truth, and fighting for that truth, right? That's hard, because in the world we live in today, that truth that we grasp onto, right? It goes against, it flies in the face of everything that you're watching on TV, that you see in the movies, that you hear on the news. And so instantly, by living that truth, you're a bit on the outside looking in, or it can seem that way, right? So that's a difficult thing that I think forges our steel or our iron will, right?
Well, it reminds, you're a surfer, and I sent you that text. I sent you that quote from Laird Hamilton, right? Yeah. We're all equal before a wave.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you're holding that truth,
yeah,
get ready.
Yeah, that's it.
Get ready for that wave, and as it should be.
Yeah.
Because to me, I believe that that's evidence that you got something special in your hand.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if you have a counterfeit,
yeah. Who cares?
Who cares? Right? No one cares about the counterfeit that you're holding.
Yeah.
The other thing that is powerful about truth for my daughter, I can't give it to her.
Yeah.
Man. I wish I could bundle it up, right? I wish I could bundle it up and say, here, happy graduation.
Yeah, exactly.
Go forth and live a life based on truth.
Yeah.
But then I would be robbing her of the journey, if it were even possible, which it isn't. It would be robbing her of that journey, of that rediscovery. The other thing that is powerful about truth is that it's liberating.
Right.
And as a parent, I want my kid to have every option available.
Yeah.
The last thing I want my kid to be is in a position where, because of choices and natural consequences, doors are closed.
Yeah.
And that's the world we live in.
Right.
Right. And you wish you could just get on the roof and yell, that's not fair. That's how it is.
Sure. Yeah.
You do some things, you make some mistakes, you just close some doors.
Yeah.
Whereas if you live your life with true principles, you make mistakes, you fix them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then
Opportunity
it keeps
exists.
those
Yeah.
opportunities open
Yeah.
to her.
Absolutely.
And the last one is just love.
Yeah.
You know, my life has been so richly blessed with love of good friends, love of an amazing wife, love of an amazing mom, and you know, stepdad and sisters and brother, and just that extended family. And I hate to sound cliche, but right now, standing where we're standing, looking at the world,
Yeah.
the world could use a little more.
Yeah. Right. The
Love,
Beatles
sweet
had
love.
it on, man.
Love is all you need.
That's all you need, man.
But I do. I mean, I think my daughter comes from a place of love, and I think that that's a natural strength we started talking about. But I do. I want her to love the life that she has.
Yeah.
I can think of no greater source of misery than to hate things you're stuck with.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And in life, I got a good friend, and he talks about choices being a puzzle pieces of life. Shout out to Mr. Brown. And he talks about those edge pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah.
You're born with those.
Yeah. I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine hating that?
Right.
Hating who you are, or who you were, your family, or those things you can't change.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that if she could fall in love with that life and love the place that she holds in this world, man, I think that would be powerful. I think that if she loves the broken roads, right? If she loves the things that, man, we talk about mistakes and learning from mistakes. How many people fall out of love with themselves because of the mistakes that they make?
Yeah.
And how can I raise a daughter to love herself as God loves her?
Right.
Despite the mistakes.
Yeah.
Right? Despite the mistakes that she makes. No one at the end of their life ever regrets love that they give.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's that life without regrets.
Yeah. Right. I was just going to say, it's like it all ties back together, but I think I love that advice, you know, for your daughter.
Well, and Dennis driving comes out of nowhere the other day and says, I believe that things that I do in love, I'm going to carry with me.
Yeah.
We can go back on record. I know we've said that in prior episodes.
Yeah, right.
Because I believe that. That's written on my heart.
Yeah.
Those things that we do are going to, come back to us tenfold while we are in this life. But on our way out, that's what's in the suitcase.
Oh, for sure. And I think, too, you know, it's like we won't go down this road too far, but, you know, in the current environment of our world, right, if we were all more compassionate and more expressive with our love towards other people. And when I say love, I think just trying to understand people where they're at, right? I think that the world would be a different place, man. It'd be a totally different place. And here's the good news, Mike Freeman. Your daughter is one of the best examples of that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's the good news. She's got that dialed in, man. I
would agree with that. It's funny that you mentioned, because the other thought that I had just thinking about the time that we had together is that 7 Habits.
Yeah.
This is going to blow you away, but that thing's 30 years old.
I was just was reading a blog the other day about the 30-year anniversary of that. Yeah. So, and it's so relevant. That's the crazy thing. Like we were talking about it earlier. I've read it a few times. I'm reading it again, you know, for the third time. I've done the audiobook twice and I'm reading it now for the third time, but it's just a powerful reminder of, I mean, that thing reinforces my idea of capacity, of like self-improvement, you know, I mean, all of these things that this podcast is about are sort of written in the pages of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right?
Yeah, but if you remember how it's structured, right? I think that the first 3 are working on private victories, and then those next 3 are, you know, public. Right. Think win-win.
Yeah, right.
And then you get the capstone is the sharpening the saw, and that's the 7th habit.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting though when you talk about the world that we are in, and that exercising compassion. That 5th habit to me, I actually pulled the book out. I too came across something and was reminded of the greatness of Covey's work. And then that 5th habit, I actually opened up to that chapter to revisit that. because the conditions that we're in right now, I know Lawrence of Arabia has all the answers. We shared out in another
every
episode.
answer, dude. It's like made in the 60s, man. They had it all figured out.
But this book is timeless in that it also holds some valuable insight into getting out of our current situation that we're in, which is some of the racial and social tension that we see in the world. Can you imagine a world for you and I to live in if everybody sought first to understand before they try to be understood, right? That's that fifth habit.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you brought that up today, and I was like, I showed you a picture on my phone, because I was reading this the other day, and I took a picture of that on my phone, of that page in the book as well. I mean, that's powerful, man. I just think that how many times, and I found myself in this situation, right, where I'm in a discussion with someone, and it's intense, for lack of a better word. And the whole time that person's talking, I'm formulating my answer,
And why do we do that?
Because we have this need to feel like we're right, And at the end of the day, what's more important is that we walk away all feeling understood, right? Whether we agree or disagree on any given topic.
And Covey makes that point, right? And I recently heard, I was listening to Art of Manliness, love that show. Yeah. And they had one of Covey's children on, and he was saying that this is the habit that is hardest.
Yeah.
Right? For the folks that go through the program and then later they do that 360-degree feedback circle.
Right.
Everyone's failing on habit number 5.
Well, because in order to really accomplish habit 5, you have to completely strip yourself of pride, right? You have to be willing to accept whatever the other point of view is. And that's a hard thing to do, because at some point, whether we're going to verbalize that we're right or just think it when they're talking to us, this guy's wrong and I'm totally right. You know what I mean? So that's a hard thing to do.
I think that there's a reason why it's habit number 5. I think that the genius of Covey's work is that habits 1 through 4 set the stage for you to have the character.
Right. And here's the thing, like if we jump ahead, habit 6 is synergize, right? You can't have synergy without a mutual understanding, right? If we're on the same page and we've decided that we're going to pool our resources, regardless of whether we agree or disagree, but we're going to pool our resources, then this is where synergy 2 + 2 becomes 5, right? That now we have more push.
Well, and to your point on capacity,
absolutely right.
When you're fired up about capacity, you're hoping that you're on that synergized train.
Oh, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But when differences exist, and people aren't thinking win-win, and they're not thinking about understanding first, you're not getting anywhere.
No, you're not getting anywhere. You're just.
And that's where we are, right? That's where we are. And I think Covey understood, but Covey understood a lot.
Yeah.
But habit number 5 says seek. I think he acknowledges in that seeking, it's not going to be the case every time.
Yeah.
Right. But the ideal is that before we actually talk, but think about it as a parent, how many times have you had an opportunity to listen to your kid and all you end up doing is trying to fix their problem?
Yeah, or they're telling me something and I'm already thinking, no, you're wrong, and I'm going to shoot this down as soon as you close your mouth. Right? So there's that aspect of it.
I think that just happened like an hour ago.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of times it's not that we're wrong. We are right.
Right.
But the second that you do that, you've lost it.
Yeah, right.
Right. You've lost the ability to communicate with them, or for them to ever really try that again.
Right. Because that principle is really less about right and wrong and more about just, can I understand what your perspective is? And can you understand what my perspective is? That's really the ultimate goal in that principle, right? It's not about, oh yes, Mike, you've proven to me that you are right, and I'm going to change my view, right? It's more that, oh, I understand where Mike's coming from, And I hope that he understands where I'm coming from.
Well, you texted me the other day a list of movies, right? And I think that the purpose behind that list is exactly that.
Right. Yeah.
Seek to understand before we're trying to be understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
And seek to see what race relationships in that full context and continuum, that landscape in America looks like by listening to other people's stories.
Yeah.
And I think that was the purpose of the blackout, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like social media, I think they took a Tuesday and it was just like, hey, we're gonna stop posting and we're gonna listen.
That happened to be on the day I was posting about my son's mission call. I felt a little bit awkward. Everybody else is total black, and I'm just saying, hey, celebrate, people.
Yeah, but I think that Covey's advice really comes in handy if we are about the listening.
Yeah.
If we truly are about the listening and we're truly about the understanding, identify some reliable sources that are going to paint you an accurate portrayal.
Yeah.
And then seek to understand.
Yeah.
Right. And then we can do the work of maybe trying to be understood ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that work, that work is complicated.
And I think, think about those moments you've had with people where you've really decided that you're not going to speak and insert your opinion. You're just going to listen. And at the end of that, just listening to that person, I mean, what's the final outcome of that meeting or that discussion? It is nothing but love, right? You feel compassion for them, for their ability to convey their point of view, and they feel completely understood and validated for where they're coming from. And I think that's a powerful place to be with people, right? So I'm terrible at it, but I'm working at it, right? That's
that's the work.
But so you're gonna have to add that list of movies to our show notes.
Yeah, we can do that. And my kid has actually beat me to it. My kids have actually jumped in and started watching the 13th.
Yeah, I finished.
Looking at the criminal justice system and the disproportionate representation of
some good stuff in there, and we'll let the listeners add to that list. They probably have a few good ideas too.
Hey, in closing, just thought I wanted to share out this title, Richest Men.
Yeah.
Richest Men in Town.
Yeah.
We have had some interesting perspective from the ladies. Right?
Yeah.
And this show is about that rich life.
Right.
You're a dad, I'm a dad, you're a husband, I'm a husband. And that's the lens through which we see the world.
Yeah.
And then we put a microphone in our face and we talk for an hour or two with other folks.
Right.
Down the road, there will most likely be some female guests on the show, always with the perspective of how can their viewpoints help you and I and others live that rich life.
Yeah. Because let's be real about that for a second. If you and if we're going to have an honest discussion about what our rich lives are, our perspective on our rich lives are molded and influenced in a great way by our own wives, right? So the female influence in my life, I got a mother, I have 4 sisters, I have a wife, I have 2 daughters. That's huge to say the least, and something that I will be eternally grateful for.
Well, and I want to go on record, and I'm going to quote Lenny Kravitz here, right?
Oh, wow,
because
I
posted on Facebook, I shared his post. He's holding up a sign saying, "It's time to turn it over to women. Men have had their chance to run the world, and look where we are." Right? So I do want to put that out there. And then I came across this too, this concept of rich and wealth.
Yeah.
Gail Miller, right? Gail Miller is the owner of the Utah Jazz. She is the wealthiest person in the state of Utah.
Yeah.
Right? She says this: rich is an expansion of your soul. Wealth is what you have as a result of things you've done. But to be rich means that you have qualities, you have experiences, you have an expanded heart. So from the mouth of a woman, I would say that is as much a definition of the program and the work that we are about as anything that I've come across recently.
Yeah.
That distinction between rich and wealth, and that's the battle we're fighting.
Yeah. I love that. I love that quote. I think that I would hope that our listeners understand that, right? That it's not about male, female. It's about us as a people finding out how to have our souls expanded, our hearts expanded, our ability to understand other people expanded. I think that's important for everyone to understand.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs to understand that we've said it from the very beginning. This is about improving us. Whatever comes of this is bonus.
Absolutely.
Right? We hope that it edifies. We hope that it adds light and doesn't, take away. We hope it adds clarity and doesn't add confusion or noise to the world. We already got lots of that.
Yeah.
Right? But we hope that the time spent here is in support of the chasing of that rich, not the wealth, but that rich, that expansion of our hearts and souls. So, any closing thoughts, man? I've thoroughly enjoyed the time that we spent, and next time, maybe we'll get a guest in here. Maybe we're not. Maybe we'll just continue to solve all the problems of the world hanging out together.
May as well. No, I've loved it. Tonight's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited. I know that we have some really good guests lined up for the coming weeks, and I'm excited to talk to them. And I'm just excited about what this project is. I mean, at the end of all of our discussions, regardless of who we've had in or who we haven't had in, I walk away feeling like I'm feeling energized to do things differently tomorrow, and that's what I hope this is all about for everybody.
Right. So hopefully you've enjoyed the time as well. If you can, if you could give us a review, if you could rate our program, you could also subscribe to the podcast. You can join our website and our email list, and that will be able to give you updates of what we're up to as we move this train forward. All right. Thank you, my friend.
It's been fun, Mike.
It has been.
To my big brother George, the richest man in town.